Well, let me just tell you the other dream because it's really short. It was like a minute dream, and it had happened a few years earlier, maybe 2 or 3 years earlier. My grandchildren were much younger. In fact, one of them was probably a baby, and the other one was possibly the same age as the children in this dream, or close to it. And in the dream, all the children were around the same age. I'm not good with this guessing age thing, and it's been a few years, so I don't remember. But I want to say they were kindergarten-ish, around that age. They weren't all the exact same age, but there were no big kids and there were no babies. So they were all in this kind of preschool-ish phase of life. And they were being taught by angels. And I was watching the angels teach these children. And what's interesting about that to me is I don't know how I knew they were angels. They didn't look like angels. They just looked like teachers, just people. And it was kind of spiritual in a sense. It didn't seem like everyday on earth kind of instruction. I got the sense that this was a kind of a spiritual thing. I don't know why, but I did. And the other interesting thing about that is I just knew, I had an inner knowing that the children would not know that these were angels, that it was done in a way on purpose for them to not know they were being taught by angels. And that was intentional. And the angels were teaching them very specific, like core important knowledge for them to have. Like you must have this information. You need this information. And they were doing it in a way that was, to me, kind of blunt. I was really kind of shocked by their candor, because we normally would like sugarcoat those things or kind of soften them or baby them down or whatever. At least in my experience, that's what I would have done. And I think most people doing this, so like that would be a little too much for a child that age or whatever. But they didn't think so. They were just giving them what they needed, but the children were doing fine with it. They were just like taking it in very matter-of-factly, like just like you were teaching them how to add 2 + 2, just useful information that you absolutely need to function, or whatever, or to do well. And I don't even know what this information was. I didn't remember any of it when I woke up. I only remember my impressions of what I was thinking while I was observing this going on, and the impression it left on me. That the information was important, that they did not sugarcoat it, that the children did fine with it and were comfortable with it, and that's just the way it was done. And I also remember thinking that if we taught like that, this probably wouldn't even be necessary for them to be being taught by these angels, that this was like necessary because they weren't getting this information. That was just my own little, I don't know that for a fact, but that was kind of my afterthought, was this probably has to be done because we don't do a good job. But it could just have been that that's just the way it's done. I don't know. So anyway, then the other thing, the other impression was that they were very wise. I was very impressed with their wisdom and how wise they were in the way they taught. And what left me with that impression was there were 2 children. There was lots of children, but there were 2 particular children in front of me with this one angel, which there was multiple angels, but there was an angel and then there was a child right behind her and one right in front of her. And the child that was just behind her, she was turned a little to the side, and there was this child right here, and she was facing the child that was in front of her. And the child behind her was a little girl, had done something or was doing something that needed correction, like she needed to be kind of, I was called out or so for whatever this thing was that she had been doing or had just done or whatever. It wasn't like right that instant. It was just that this was there and needed to be addressed. And but the angel was facing the little boy in front of her instead of the little girl that needed corrected, and she was just talking to him and just giving him instruction. And what she was actually doing was saying everything in earshot of the little girl behind her, fully aware that the little girl was hearing everything that she said as she spoke to the little boy, but it was all for the little girl's benefit. And neither of these children were aware of that. Like, what she was telling the little boy was kind of, I think it was kind of like how to navigate this type of situation and what would be best for him to do in this particular situation. So the little boy was none the wiser that this was actually for the little girl, and the little girl was none the wiser that this was being said in earshot for her to learn, and she wasn't called out. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't even really aware that she was being corrected. But yet she got the knowledge without. It was like, I guess, which is kind of funny because they were so candid about everything, but not in a hurtful way. It was like she handled these children very gently and with a wisdom that got the job done without anything that wasn't necessary to. It was just like it just wasn't necessary to call the little girl down for this. It just wasn't necessary. This was all that was necessary. It would get the job done. And I was just like blown away. I was just like, I would never known or thought to handle that way. And it was just like this. It was just perfect. Just like this perfect amount of what needed to happen. So anyway, all of that to say for this little tiny short dream that I took way too long to explain because I was so impressed with it. I was just like, this is amazing. Because in the dream that I just uploaded, I was doing that same mindset that I've had where it's like worried that that's just too much for a child. Like, just uncomfortable with how they're going to deal with us or whatever, even though it may be information they need. It's like, it's just not time yet, or it's just whatever. They're too young, they're too whatever. We'll tell it to them, this way or whatever. So anyway, I'm not saying that I necessarily should have done anything different in that particular situation. I still am not sure how I would handle that exact same situation, but it gives me room to question my response because I know myself and it's like, and I could just be being that bad instructor of not using, the same level of candor that the Lord would. So that happened, that whole revisiting that angel dream with the children had happened the day that I posted that